Hey everybody, it's Robin Ray Green here, your moderator for the Heal Your Child from the Inside Out group and author of Heal Your Child from the Inside Out. So I am here today because I want to talk a little bit about the metal element, and I'm wanting to start with the metal element because it's fall, and fall is the time of the year that's associated with metal. And we're going to go over more things, the correspondences, and I'll give you a little brief overview of the 5 elements if you're not familiar with the 5 elements. So I want to welcome everybody here, and if you're watching this over on my YouTube channel or on my blog, I would love for you to come over on Facebook and join the Heal Your Child from the Inside Out group. Later on there'll be a button below this video. Hey Megan, glad you're here. And go ahead, if you're not on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel and we'll be posting more videos over there as well. And those of you who are joining live, I love it when you say hi and wave at me. That's really fun. And if you're watching the recording, the same goes. So welcome everybody. So let's start with just a brief overview of the 5 elements. So if you've read my book, you're probably familiar, but it's always good to have a little refresher. The 5 elements is a system of correspondences that we use in Chinese medicine that helps us understand patterns, and it helps us understand how many different things that can be seemingly unrelated actually are all connected. And then it gives us some guidelines to help the healing process, to help bring our bodies, minds, and spirits back into balance. And the 5 element system can be used 3 ways. Really, there's 3 ways that I use it in my practice. And the first is to understand like the nature, temperament, and personality of the kids and the parents that I work with. Because that can give us a lot of insight on some of the challenges that they'll have, both emotionally and physically. We can use the 5 elements to help us understand physical problems that children are having, like whether they've got asthma or allergies or digestive issues or lack of focus at school, whatever it might be. We can look at it from the lens of the 5 elements, and it can give us additional information and help guide us in healing specific conditions. And then finally, we can use the 5 elements. Really, we can apply it to just about anything, because there's really 5 ways of being, 5 different kinds of relationships. So we can start applying it into other areas of our life. And that can be really helpful just to give a fresh perspective on things. So like, for instance, I'm in a marriage group, and with the different couples, and we all have different styles of being in our marriages, right? And you can use the 5 elements to look at that, to understand different ways of being in a marriage. So there's really an unlimited possibilities on how we could use the 5 elements, and it's really fun when you get into it. But today we're going to specifically be talking about the metal element. And as I said earlier, metal is associated with fall, so we are right in the prime metal time. And some of the correspondences associated with metal, and I've got this nice little sheet here that I have my little cheat sheet. I have a few extras of these, so if you guys are interested in this little sheet, which has like the correspondences, it shows you the actual meridians over here. And on the back it has some acupressure points. If you're interested in one of these, I have a few extras and I could mail them to you, so just let me know. I only have a few though, so it'll be first come, first serve. So let's talk about those correspondences. So the color associated with metal is white. The time of day is 3 to 5 a.m. And this is interesting because you'll notice, at least I notice with the kids that I work with, the ones that are having asthma or allergies, or they've got a bad head cold, which are all associated with the metal element, you'll notice that they might wake up more frequently between 3 and 5 a.m. Or like if your child normally wakes up early, say at 6 a.m., they might start waking up at 5 a.m. when they have a head cold. The body tissue associated with the metal element is the skin. And the voice sound is weeping or crying. And I do notice that those with either a metal imbalance or strong metal influence, they're much more, they're easy criers. They might be sympathy criers. Even little boys who have strong metal influence, they're going to be easy to cry, and so that can be kind of hard as they are getting older, learning to deal with that strong emotion of grief, which is really, not really sometimes socially acceptable for boys to cry. the emotion, of course, associated with metal is grief. But I wanted to talk a little bit about that emotion because this is kind of something coming up in my clinic with a few of my patients right now. And there's really a spectrum of grief and a sort of slightly different way that I have, or take that I have on this emotion associated with the metal element. Because obviously, like if we lose someone, if we, we're going to be grieving. If we lose a beloved pet, we might be grieving. But there's also, I think, in the metal element, this certain amount of feeling of lack, like a feeling that like they don't have enough, or the grass is greener on the other side, or there might be a propensity towards jealousy when someone has more than someone else. And so it's not really just about grief, it's also this feeling of like not enough. And this can show up later on as like self-esteem issues. This can show up feeling like you're not good enough. And we'll talk about that when I get to really talking about the metal element types, the kids that are really strongly influenced by metal in their personality. We'll talk more about this in that video, but for now I just wanted to mention that because I think it is important that it's not just about crying and tears, but grief can also be this sense of lack in your life. And the healing tone associated with the metal element is kind of like a snake. And so I was talking with a friend this morning about that, and it's curious because sometimes kids with a metal element might have a lisp or might have trouble making this sound. Not always, but there is this correspondence or association with the sound and the child's element type. So those are the big major correspondences associated with metal. And then the big thing that I haven't mentioned yet is the organ systems associated with metal are the lungs and the large intestine. And in Chinese medicine, I like to think of it as the lung system, or really the way we think of it in Western medicine is the respiratory system. So metal element is associated with your nose, your throat, and your lungs. And all of the apparatus of breathing is associated with the metal element. And then the large intestine is also associated with the metal element. And what I find really fascinating about that is, as I've studied more functional medicine and I am just fascinated by the gut microbiome, the more that we understand how the gut and the immune system are intimately connected. So if there was a parallel for a bodily system in Western medicine that parallels the metal element, it would be our immune system. So the lungs in Chinese medicine are akin to the immune system as well, and that's why it also includes our skin, because our skin is like our protective barrier against the environment. So it's our skin, our lungs, our immune system, our large intestine, they're all connected. And so that's why we see a lot of times there is this, when kids have immune system imbalances, they also have gut imbalances because of this connection between the lungs and the large intestine. And in addition, when we look at the 5-element cycle, which I have a little picture of, I was going to show you guys here. There's the 5-element cycle, and if you'll notice here, the earth element nourishes the metal element. And the earth element is our digestive system. It's like our pancreas. It's our, our ability to process and digest food. And when we're having any trouble in that area, then it'll affect the metal element. And so what I find, because the lungs and the large intestine are associated with the metal element, children with metal imbalances will have anything from asthma, allergies, eczema, dry skin, easy to have skin rashes. They might have constipation, dry stools, and things like that. So when I'm thinking about the metal element and these conditions, not only am I thinking about the lungs and the respiratory system, but I'm also always thinking about the digestive system and thinking about how we can improve diet. Sometimes just improving the diet, getting rid of processed foods is enough to shift those conditions. And sometimes we need to go deeper and find out if there's food sensitivities that are creating a lot of excess mucus that aggravate asthma and allergies or aggravate inflammation in the case of something like eczema. So those are some of the connections that I think about when I think about the metal element. The metal element controls, its function is to control our breathing, but on an emotional level also it controls our, it helps us take in new ideas and new concepts. So it's about taking in the bigger picture and all the little details of something new that we're learning, so that we can absorb the essence of it, what's practical and what we need to know, and like let go of things that we don't need any longer. And in some ways this reflects the large intestine, because the large intestine is about fermenting and breaking down like the food that we've eaten that's gone through our digestive system, and like extracting the water and then releasing that which doesn't serve us. So sometimes that can be reflected in thoughts and ideas too. When kids kind of get fixated on something and they can't let go, there's this connection with the metal element of like fixation. And so that's something that is really fascinating to me as well. So there's the physical symptoms that can come along, there's the emotional symptoms, some metal element. Sometimes people with a strong metal element have a tendency to be more negative or think negatively about things. They might have a tendency to just be like, no, they don't like new things, they don't want to try new things. They tend to be rule followers, they like rules, they like structure. It helps them create order in their world. They like to know what their schedules are. So those are some of the traits. So I'm going to go more in depth on that when I talk about the more mental emotional aspects of metal. But today I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we can do to nurture the metal element, because we are in the fall season and it does correspond to the immune system, and we want our children's immune systems to be really strong right now because they're going to be exposed to all kinds of germs at school, and we want to make sure that their immune systems are strong enough to handle it, and that if they do get sick, they get better in a timely manner. And if you'll recall, in my last video, I talked about Chinese medicine germ theory, where it's not just about the germs that we're exposed to, but it's about the state of our health when we're exposed to those germs. And I use the example of our body or our immune system is like the house, and the germs are like the burglar trying to get into the house. So we want to make our house really strong and locked up tight so that the burglars can't get in. So one of the ways that we do that is with our diet, of course. We want to make sure the kids aren't overdoing it on sugary foods, white refined carbohydrates, processed foods, fast foods. I mean, these are the big no-nos. And then too many cold foods, because as the weather temperature drops, although here in California we're still having like 80-degree days, it is dropping at night and getting cooler at night. So we want to think about making sure our kids aren't overdoing it on cold smoothies and cold ice cold drinks and things like that. The other thing, we can add some foods, and this is on on the sheet, and it's also in my book. I talk about the different foods that will like nurture a particular element and foods that will actually take away and damage the element. And let me see if I can find it really quick in the book, because I know most of them, I do not have it all memorized. Let's see. And let's see here. Where did it go? There we go. Okay, metal elements. So I have a nice little list. Okay, so let's go through the list. There's a few foods that support the metal element. Sweet rice, oats, sweet potatoes, mustard greens, molasses, rice syrup, and poached pears with cinnamon and honey. There is a recipe on my website for that one. And then strong spicy foods, things like chilies, garlic, ginger, horseradish, green onion, radishes, and white peppercorns. So those are all things that are supportive of the metal element. And then you want to avoid too many things that deplete the metal element, and that includes like too much, meat, dairy products, things I mentioned earlier, processed foods, fried and greasy foods, raw iced foods. Too many citrus juices right now is not a good idea, and refined white salt. Citrus juices I know right now are really popular, like they promote them as vitamin C, but they also have a lot of sugar, especially things like orange juice. So just be careful not to give too many of those foods. And other foods that are beneficial, things like sauerkraut, olives, pickles, leeks, green onions, azuki beans, sea salt, rosehip tea, vinegar, lemon, limes, grapefruit, and green apples. Those are all really good. So, and Megan and Kenza, I saw your messages, and I would be happy to send you guys a little cheat sheet that I have. So what we can do, I'll message in the comments below and tell you what to do so I can send those to you. Okay, so those are some basic things that we can do diet-wise. I do want to caution people about dairy because dairy can create a lot of mucus, and cold dairy creates a lot of mucus, and so we just want to avoid too much dairy this time of year. A little bit is okay, but if you notice your child having a lot of phlegm and mucus, be really mindful of the dairy that they're eating. And when we think about balancing the metal element, I just want to also mention we also go all the way to the wellness wheel. So the wellness wheel is, it's not just one thing, it's not a linear concept, it's really about all the little things that we do that add up to wellness. So that might be going to your acupuncturist, it might be doing acupressure and massage. I've got a great video on that on my website. It can be the diet, definitely improving the diet and avoiding sugar. It's about staying hydrated, getting enough sleep, sensible hand washing with just regular soap and water. So if your kids are coming home and they've been around a bunch of snotty kids that are sick, you know, just strip off their clothes, just a little hand washing on the hands and face, and that should be really, really helpful. And then finally, herbal medicine is a great way to balance the metal element. And there's one particular formula that we have over at robinsherbs.com called Little Sentinel, and I've got it right here so I can show you guys. So this is Little Sentinel, and Little Sentinel, one of the very first herbs in Little Sentinel, the Chinese name is Huang Qi, but it is known as astragalus, and it's a great immune tonic. And Little Sentinel works to balance the metal element, the earth element, and the water element. And this is especially great for kids that have a propensity to get sick, or if they have a propensity to getting chest colds. This formula is traditionally used to help with situations like that. And the nice thing about the Little Sentinel is that it is a, oops, here we go. I'm getting a little off. There we go. It's like mirror. I have to go backwards to what I'm thinking. So Little Sentinel, it's a glycerin tincture, and it's gluten, soy, dairy free, alcohol free, and it's non-GMO. And the herbs, like I mentioned last week, they're triple tested for purity. And the company that, the manufacturers that make Little Sentinel, I mean, they are fantastic because they're really all about collecting the herbs at the right time when the essence of each herb is at its peak, and so it has maximum benefit. And the process that they use to make the tinctures is just extraordinary to make sure that you're really getting what we call the 5 flavors. Each herb has a particular flavor, has a particular essence of it that makes it effective, and that is preserved in the way that they process and make sure that the herbs are there. So the way that you can use Little Sentinel is as a daily immune tonic. And you know, I'll put a formula for like how to dose it, but basically you can do it by the child's age, and then you would want to give it to them twice a day, like morning and night, just on a daily basis. And then if your child does get sick and then they're having symptoms, then what you would do is you would stop the Little Sentinel and then you would switch them to an herbal formula that would address the specific symptoms. So for instance, if they were having a lot of sinus congestion, you would give them the Sino Relief, and you would have them take the Sino Relief instead. Or for instance, if they got sick and were having a sore throat, then you would give them the Throat Soothe. And then once they're over the cold, like you would keep them on the herbs until they are, like I usually kept my kids on herbs a couple days past the point of feeling better, and then I would switch them back to the Little Sentinel or like daily immune tonic that I would have them in. And the reason why we switch and stop the immune one and start on the herbs to help the specific symptoms is because in Chinese medicine, we go back to that burglar in house idea. And that is that once the burglar is inside, we don't want to lock the doors and lock the burglar inside and give him like hamburgers and hot dogs and feed him. we want to do everything we can to expel him. So that's why we switch over to the herbs that will actually expel the bacteria or virus. And then once they're feeling better, then we don't worry, but we put them back on Little Sentinel and like lock the house up tight. Let's see. So Megan says here that her daughter's definitely a dominant metal type, but she's a very picky eater, and the list of supportive foods are not really part of her palate. Once she's more balanced, will she be more likely to enjoy those foods? Ooh, that's a good question, Megan, because I know exactly what you're talking about. And you're like, sure, honey, why don't you eat these olives and pickles? And how about some green onions on top? Yum. And they just look at you like you have 4 heads. So part of it too, when the large intestine or the digestive, like the gut's out of balance, when the gut becomes out of balance, that sort of heightens the sensitive nature of metal children, or really any child with a metal imbalance, and they tend to be more picky. They tend to not want to eat the foods that are good for them. So part of it is about healing the gut and getting the gut back in balance, and then they are more open to trying new foods. And then part of it is just sometimes it's like we have to be like stealthy moms, and we have to go, okay, so she's not going to eat sauerkraut, but let's say she likes ranch dressing. So you take the kraut juice from your sauerkraut, and you have her ranch dressing, and you just put like a little spoonful of it in and stir it up so she doesn't even know it's in there, and then you give it to him that way. So there's like little ways of trying to get those foods into them. Maybe you could try sweet potato fries or something like that. Or maybe you could blend a little bit of sweet potato in regular potato and mix it together and see if they'll try it. So sometimes it's just we just have to be persistent, and we have to be creative, and we can't get mad at them for not being open to eating new foods. We just have to like model flexibility, and that it's all about trying new things and reminding them of maybe foods in the past that they tried that they enjoyed or that they liked. So that can be really, really helpful. All right, let's see. So Cyno Relief, I don't have it here because we have it at the warehouse, but I sold out of my Chest Relief, so I don't have a bottle to show you that one. But there's a formula called Chest Release, which is great if children have a cough, bronchitis, chest infection, chest congestion. And then for the kids with asthma and allergies, Breathe Easy is the traditional formula that we use for asthma and wheezing. So those are the really great ones. And then there's one more, there's Resolve Phlegm, which is great for the type of cough that when they're basically over the illness, but then the cough just lingers on, and they've got like that wet cough, or just that phlegmy cough, and they wake up with it in the morning and they cough at night. Then you would, Resolve Phlegm is a great formula for that. So those are some basics for the metal element, and definitely do your best to nurture your kids and nurture their metal elements as best they can. And like if they're picky eaters, then just focus on some acupressure points that we can do. And so let's see, the one acupressure point on the wrist here, let me see if I could get, there we go. So on the pulse point right here, this is a really nourishing point it's called Lung 9, and this is great for nurturing and supporting a healthy lung element. And the other one is on the collarbone, kind of like at the edge of the collarbone over here is Lung 1, and that's another great point for balancing and supporting the metal element. So those are just a couple things that you can do to support your child's metal element. And then next week I will go a little bit more in depth, and I'm going to talk more about the asthma, allergies, eczema, and we'll just give you like some highlights of some of the things that I do to address those conditions, and to help bring their bodies back into balance and help them feel better sooner. For some kids, it's a big thing, right? I mean, they're not gonna get better with just one thing. It's like really, again, coming back to that wellness wheel, helping improve their gut health so they can improve their diet, so they can improve their, open their palate a little more. It's about having the right herbs on hand and addressing things early. So we'll talk all about that next week. And then probably the week after that, that's going to be the Halloween. So I won't be coming on live on Halloween, but I'll be back the following week after that. So I love seeing you guys here. Everybody say hi to me in the comments, say hello. Please, if you have any questions that I didn't answer, I would love to have you leave those in the comments, and I will see you guys all next week. All right, bye everyone. Thanks for coming.